In this topic, we move from high-level principles into the specific AML and CFT rules you work with every day. You'll see how global standards turn into KYC, record-keeping, monitoring, and reporting obligations that drive real decisions inside financial institutions. In AML and CFT, your daily work is shaped first by global standards, like FATF, then translated into national laws, and finally, your firm's policies. To make this practical, focus on 4 core pillars. Customer due diligence is about knowing who you're dealing with and why they need your services. Transaction monitoring checks whether activity matches that profile. Record keeping preserves the evidence. Regulatory reporting turns red flags into formal reports to authorities. Everything else in this course connects back to strengthening these 4 pillars. The risk-based approach makes your AML efforts proportional to the risk you're actually facing. You begin by assessing exposure. Which customers, products, channels, and countries create higher money laundering or terrorist financing risk? Then you classify relationships into low, medium, or high risk using a consistent model. That risk rating then drives your controls. Simplified checks for low risk, standard CDD for most customers, and full enhanced due diligence and monitoring where risk is highest. Customer identification is the front door of any AML program. For individuals, we must reliably know who they are. Full legal name, date and place of birth, residential address, and a government-issued ID. For legal entities, we focus on the legal name and form, registration number, official address, and the true purpose of the business. In digital onboarding, regulators increasingly expect liveness checks and biometrics because anonymous or fictitious customers cannot be allowed into the system. Beneficial ownership is about real people, not just company names. Regulators expect us to drill through every layer of a structure until we reach the humans who ultimately benefit from or control the customer. Start with the ownership threshold. Who holds, directly or indirectly, 25% or more? If nobody meets that, move to controlling persons, such as senior managers. For complex structures, trusts, foundations, or offshore layers, apply enhanced scrutiny, gather extra documents, and clearly map the full ownership chain. Customer identification has 3 key moments. When you first collect the customer's details, when you verify those details, and when you allow them to transact. The default rule is straightforward. Verification must be completed before the relationship is fully opened, and access should be blocked if verification fails. Some regimes allow tightly controlled, risk-based deferrals for clearly low-risk activity, but only with strong justification. And remember, CDD is not set and forget. You refresh it through periodic and event-driven reviews. Standard CDD is designed for low to normal risk, such as typical domestic retail customers. Enhanced due diligence is reserved for clearly higher risk cases, including PEPs, correspondent banks, or high-risk jurisdictions. 2 things change. Decision rights move up to senior management, and the depth of questioning increases, especially around source of wealth and source of funds. You also shorten the review cycle to at least annually, and for correspondent banking, you thoroughly test the respondent's AML controls. Sanctions screening acts as a continuous gatekeeper. Customers and payments must be checked against lists from bodies like the UN, OAC, and the EU, not just at onboarding, but throughout the relationship. When the system flags a name, the analyst's job is to decide whether it's a false positive or a true match. That distinction drives the outcome. False positives are cleared and released. True matches require immediate action. Freeze assets where required, block or reject the transaction, and file the necessary reports. Think of transaction monitoring as a surveillance engine. Thousands of daily transactions flow through automated rules and scenarios that reflect your risk-based approach. Higher risk customers, products, and countries get tighter thresholds and more complex behavioral patterns, such as structuring or rapid in and out flows. The system doesn't decide what's suspicious. It only generates alerts. Analysts then review those alerts, gather context, document their decisions, and feed their feedback back into tuning. So over time, the engine becomes more accurate and better aligned to actual risk. Regulators expect firms to have a long memory. In practice, that means keeping CDD, transaction, and reporting records for at least 5 years, and often longer in higher risk cases. Those records must allow someone to reconstruct the full story of a customer's activity, and they must be securely stored yet quickly retrievable when authorities ask. Once your internal investigation reaches a reasonable suspicion, it can't stay internal. You must convert that suspicion into a formal report to the Financial Intelligence Unit, and you must do it promptly. That includes suspicious activity reports, large cash transaction reports above local thresholds, and travel rule information on cross-border wires. Equally important, you never tip off the customer. Silence toward the customer and clear, factual reporting to the FIU are both legal requirements. Effective AML and CFT compliance starts with governance, not software. The board owns the risk appetite, approves the policies, and remains accountable for failures, even when tasks are delegated. The MLRO and compliance team translate that intent into a functioning program, clear procedures, reporting to regulators, and credible challenge to the business. First-line staff make it real in daily operations by following those procedures, spotting red flags, and escalating concerns. If any layer is weak, the whole framework is exposed. AML and CFT should be seen as one integrated ecosystem, not a checklist. Risk assessment sits at the center, shaping how you onboard customers, monitor activity, and handle alerts and reporting. Governance and audit then test whether those controls actually work. Each investigation feeds back into your risk view, so the program keeps learning. Technology amplifies your reach, but human judgment decides what's truly suspicious. Over time, audits, regulator feedback, and lessons from cases continuously sharpen and rebalance the whole framework. In practice, everything comes back to risk. Use the risk-based approach to decide how deep you go and be able to defend that choice. Always push until you identify the real people behind a relationship. Let technology surface patterns, but let humans make the final calls. And finally, carefully document what you saw and why you acted.